knowledge be widely available. So we are back. We are back. Mick, why don't we? I want to get into your story and the work that you're doing. Do you want to give us a bit of an overview of the problem that you wanted to solve when you first launched your business?
Absolutely. I mean, firstly, just let me say the first thing I thought of when everything went dark was if you're in a conversation on the phone with someone and it's a boring conversation and you just want to get off, the secret is always hang up when you're talking, because then they don't think you just hung up on them. So I don't know how that's relevant for everything going dark, but when we first started Builders Business Blackbelt, and I was talking to our members about this just the other day, the reality of the situation was I wanted to just have a coaching business where I could make a decent amount of money and do something that I like doing. But then through the process of building that and reading about Simon Sinek, Start With Why, and The Infinite Game in particular, and learning about just cause, I started to really get in touch with this whole idea of changing the building industry in our country, in Australia, and that has become a complete focus and a passion for me. And Builders Business Blackbelt is now sort of our laboratory for figuring out solutions to problems in the building industry that are very common with all different builders. And the podcast is now an outlet for solutions to common problems that builders have that we've tested in our Builders Business Blackbelt laboratory with our builders all over the country. So it's evolved considerably over the last 8 years, and now it really is focused on what do we need to do to change the industry, and the podcast has been absolutely critical in that progress. It's been incredibly influential. While I've got the talking stick, I'd just like to publicly thank Ronsley and James and everybody else in the Whamley for their input and their support and their guidance and all of that sort of stuff. Learning the art of podcasting and really, even today, how to make it engaging, how to make it entertaining, all of those things that you've got to focus on to make the podcast a really high leverage, worthwhile tool in your business toolkit. And I remember having a conversation with Ronsley a couple of years ago, and he says, you really should be talking your builders into doing a podcast. And I said, Ronsley, don't be ridiculous. As if a builder would do a podcast, you idiot. But he continued talking, as he does, and I listened, and he convinced me that it was a good idea, and now it's happening. Like we've got builders in our Black Belt membership that have podcasts, successful podcasts. The difference it makes to their building business is amazing, so that's why I always listen to Ronsley, even though quite often he talks some really crazy stuff, but there's something in it. There's always something in it.
Thank you, Mick. If I was any lighter in skin color, you'd see me go pink, but I'm blessed with mocha skin. Thank you for that. What I wanted to say was, you're not the only one that actually said to me, Ronsley, that's a ridiculous idea, right? It's been happening for like 8-9 years now. And it's really interesting because not much has changed in the reaction. It's just the different people that are along the journey, they kind of go, that's ridiculous, Ronsley. How will a podcast do that for me? And it's been kind of cool. It's been kind of crazy that this podcast has become kind of my world. I've never really imagined that would be the case. So I'm glad to hear that story. But the question I really wanted to ask is, like, what are you doing now in your podcast that's making this difference? Like, where do you see, like, when you think of return, right? I'm not only talking about return on investment. I'm talking about return on investment, return on time, return on scalability. What are your returns when you're doing this podcast? What does that look like for you?
What's happened of late is that the podcast has become a critical, essential part of our business. And it used to be just something like that we thought we'd do because it might add a bit of value, or, I'm not even sure why we started it. but now it's become an absolutely critical part of our business, because almost without fail, every lead that comes into our business now that has a conversation voluntarily says, I've been listening to the podcasts. And sometimes people have been listening to them for a while. Sometimes people have listened to one episode and reached out to us. And so it's become a lead generator to a certain extent, but all of the other stuff that we do to generate leads, without a doubt, the podcast has heavily influenced the prospect as far as trusting us. There's a really high level of trust when they first speak to us, because they feel like they know me. They feel like that they've met me before. They vibe. They resonate with the sort of stuff that we're talking about in the podcast, because obviously we're constantly talking to builders. So what we're talking about in the podcast is at the front of their mind. We're giving them solutions to those problems. They love it. It creates trust. It creates connection. It creates a relationship even before we have that conversation. So the impact that has had on the business has been enormous, because obviously a prospect that is much keener and really wanting to jump into a relationship, a coaching relationship with us, makes that whole sales process so much easier. But the real key to it is the quality of the people that are coming into our business now, and the results that they're getting because of what they're learning through the podcast before they even get started. And it just creates this really high level of trust, I've found. And so if I stand back and have a look at our business now and our priorities in the business, we put a lot of focus, our major effort goes into the creation of the podcast. It's the number one thing for us now, which is just ridiculous.
Mick, one of the most literally, that's not obviously a word. One of the lesser, I literally have a degree in English as well, which was quite embarrassing. One of the lesser spoken attributes of a podcast and a business is the leading by example factor. Now, you can go to websites and look at reviews and looking at these different things, but when you see the leader of a business sharing their wisdom, having these amazing conversations, having the discipline to put content out there on a consistent basis, it just changes the game in terms of trust. Like it really does. Even if it's only 50 people who are listening, it's much better to have the trust of those 50 people who might tell 2 or 3 people each that you're the right person for the job, for the services, which is huge. But also, Mick, you're solving, all the work that you do solves a very valuable problem. I was wondering if you could share a little bit about the importance of having a price point for a product or service that you provide that enables the business to scale, rather than, say, a business owner out there who's selling widgets for $1 that requires manufacturing and all these different things. What are the difference in terms of price points that you're seeing works well with the clients that you work with, and how that has helped the people that you've worked with?
Yeah, what a great question. Price point is really important from the perspective that one of the things that we teach our builders is that you need to create enough value to be able to charge premium prices, because the experience for your customer is actually elevated if they pay significantly for the product or the service. It's like, the expensive watches, the Rolex. It's almost an ego thing, and if someone pays more for their product or service, they respect it more. That they have a stroke to the ego, all of that sort of stuff. It makes a big difference. And our price point, like our Black Belt membership is around $26,000 a year, and when a builder first hears that, they freak out. But if you can show them the value that by investing, $25,000, $26,000 a year, you can add $100,000 to your profitability in the business within a year or 24 months, it all of a sudden becomes a great deal. But having a price point that communicates that what you're about to buy, what you're about to dive into, has massive value, I think is really, really important. There's been a gazillion studies done, where they'll put a crate of oranges in a supermarket next to another crate of oranges. They're the identical oranges. They just put a price much higher on one lot than the other. Nothing's said about the quality of it or whatever, and guess which box of oranges goes first? It's the more expensive ones, because it must represent value. And from a coaching perspective, if you want to really help your clients, your members get better results, they need to have that buy-in. And if they invest financially in it, they really, really value what you're doing far more. Interestingly enough, when COVID first started, we still have a program called Blueprint to Black Belt, $5,500 entry, 12-week program. And I thought, I need to help builders at the start of COVID because all sorts of things were going crazy. And I offered it for nothing. And about 25 builders signed up for the free version, and it was exactly the same as the $5,500 version that we do today. I'll throw it open to the audience. How many people do you think engaged out of those 25 people who signed up for free? You're very close. Ronsley says none. That one guy actually engaged and participated in the course, and is now a black belt member and going great guns. 1 out of 25. When people pay the $5,500, they show up. They participate. They engage. So price point is really important. It's got to be affordable, but it's also got to be, to use one of James's made-up words, stretchability. It's got to stretch you. It's got to be challenging. And it's good that we're making up words today. I love it.
Yeah, literally as well was another one that came up in conversation. But to your point, Mick, did you always believe that? Did you always believe that a higher price point was the way to do? And what were your initial roadblocks to that belief, and then how did that change over time?
Well, first part of the question is no, I didn't believe it. I was hypnotized like most other people that the key to getting a sale is discount. And I was taught that, don't discount, add value. And yeah, that was a nice saying, but I really struggled with it because I think the next part of the answer to that question is this a word, James? We need to check in with, because you've got all of the credentials about this. I forgot even what the word is now. But deservability was the word. Is that a word?
Deservability. Yeah, I think just the reason I like that, Mick, is because it's two positive words batched together. Deservability, I think, is fantastic. Consider it officially a word if it's not already.
Okay. Excellent. So that's the next part of this is I didn't feel that I deserved success. I didn't feel that, and you don't think this consciously. All of this is going on, in the subconscious, that you've got all these, self-imposed limitations that just so you sabotage yourself because you don't deep down believe that you deserve to be successful. You don't deserve to be paid this much. And it takes a little bit of self-work, maybe a lot of self-work to get to the point where you genuinely believe that what you're doing is valuable, and it's totally okay to be being remunerated, and earning some good money and as a reward for the effort that you're putting in. So that has changed. I've gone from believing that discounts were the way to go to adding value. I absolutely believe that. I will not discount. I just continue to add value. And that is because I finally realised that people need to pay, so they'll pay attention. And
absolutely,
that's okay.
Mick. It's so well said. I read something earlier today from Peter Diamandis, founder of XPRIZE, and I want to share that because it's so relevant in terms of what you just shared there, Mick. Peter said, most people and companies are happy with incremental progress. They are happy with 10% more revenue or a 10% reduction in costs. The challenge is that if they're only aiming for 10%, then 10% is likely all you'll get. A 10% objective is anchored in an incremental and scarcity mindset, but the world's most successful people don't act based on scarcity. They act based on abundance and an exponential mindset that enables them to pursue 10x and 1,000% growth, a moonshot, rather than that 10%. So it's a big lesson out there for business owners. Stop aiming for that 10% and that incremental stuff. And if you're giving away these things for free, I mean, I've done it. I'm sure Ron's has done it. Mick just shared a bunch of ways that he did that. When people pay, they pay attention. They have to invest. They have to have some skin in the game. And only when they do that will they have the value and the commitment and the willingness, because desire is really the thing that we're trying to get at here. If someone doesn't have that desire, you can't help them. And it's very, very, very rare. I mean, I have some examples of where I have given away things for free and people have been amazing, but I am far more cautious and I only do it to the right people and unbelievably rare for the right thing. When people pay, they pay attention. You have to have that skin in the game.
Yeah. The just to add to that, what you just said about the 10x thing. Just to share a quick story, many, many moons ago, I was sitting in the most boring seminar I've ever attended in my life, and there were all of these academics just putting up PowerPoint slides just filled with text and just reading from it. And I felt like, why didn't you email me the thing? It would have been just as beneficial. But this guy was a rock star. This one guy who spoke, and if he wasn't in this seminar, he would have been very, very boring. But he came in and he started talking about this whole. He wrote a book called the X10 Memplex. He was also very academic. And his point was exactly that people, shoot for a 25% increase in profit for the year. And he said, what if you asked yourself the question, what do we need to do to multiply our business by a factor of 10? And I just looked around the room and I could see everybody folding their arms and sitting back and going, what a dick, what a useless question. And no one got it. It's what he was saying was, just ask yourself the question without limitations. What do I need to do to multiply this thing by 10? Just grab every idea, no matter how crazy it is. And he said that maybe 95% of the ideas that you just came up with aren't applicable. You can't implement them because there are, in reality, limitations in space, in finance, in resources, whatever. But he said that 5% of the ideas that you came up with simply because you asked the question, you can implement. But had you not asked the question, those ideas would never have seen the light of day. And what blew me away, it was a great presentation from that perspective, but the lesson that I learned, that I felt like I was the only one in the room going, shit, yeah, I love this. And everybody else in the room was just sort of sitting there, what a stupid idea. Why would we ask that question when it can't be done? And it's like, come on, guys, we've got to listen to this sort of stuff. We've got to do that sort of stuff. And the other, just to wrap it up, the other thing he said, that if you set that goal for 25% more profit, you have to hit the goal 100% to get 25% more profit. But if you set a goal for 10 times and you fail awfully, like you just crash and burn, and you get 30% more profit, it's like, yeah, you know, the chances of hitting 25% more profit, if that's your objective, are very low.
Yeah, it's like my grandmother used to say this: aim for the stars, you'll at least land on the treetops or something, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, I don't think that's right, but
You absolutely butchered that
we'll
quote,
go
Ron. We're making up words, we're making up quotes. That's what we do on Podcasting for Business.
Yep.
We really try and give you the full gamut of intellectual awareness here.
Yeah. Well, that was interesting. I'm keen to get into the mistake if we can, and then maybe get some comments from Mick before we wrap this up, because literally all three of us can. Obviously, Mick can speak under cement. That is just a given. But,
underwater with a mouthful of rocks for 7 hours, they say.
This is obviously not your first rodeo.
Absolutely. Let's get into the mistake for today. So the mistake for today is forgetting to include and engage your audience in your podcast content. It's a very, very important mistake that we need to rectify right now. So let's diagnose it. Let's give you some actionable steps that you can take to fix this in your podcast. So the big thing about this is we don't want to talk to your audience. We want to bring your audience in so they're part of your show. They're part of the whole experience, and they're a regular part of your life, and you're a regular part of their life. Now, there are a heap of ways to do this, but something that's working really well right now is getting your community to participate in your podcast by asking questions. Now, to do that, they can submit a question to you via email, or they could post it in a community group that you have. For example, we're live now in the We Are Podcast group on Facebook. People could submit questions for that we cover on the Podcasting for Business show, or Should I Start a Podcast? You can then read out that question during the podcast and answer it. Or you can ask them to send their question via an audio message or a video. And when you include that in the finished product of the show, it's so much more engaging and so much more powerful. And I want to give you an example of how I was able to do that. I had Conor McGregor's coach on my podcast, Coach Owen Roddy, an amazing guy. So I was able to let people in my community know, people in my inner circle. I said, look, I've got this amazing coach of one of the most recognized athletes in history coming on the show. If you could ask him one question, what would it be? And bang, 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 you get all of these questions, and you start to build hype for your podcast episode, and you start to get a lot of people involved in that. And a little secret here is a lot of them are really good questions, which means that you don't have to worry so much about coming up with good questions. Your community has already done that for you. Now, what happened there as a result of that was I was able to email all of those people. You can outsource this. You can get someone on your team, like a VA, or someone on your team can email every single one of those people, or just do a mass email, BCC, to let them know, thank you for submitting the question. Your question is answered in the episode that has just gone live. Here is a link where you can see your question being featured and getting answered by this person. Let us know what you think of the show, or drop a comment if it resonated or something like that. Before you know it, if you do that the right way, you've got dozens and dozens of people ready to listen to that episode and share it with a whole bunch of other people. You've made your audience part of the conversation. And Seth Godin does this really well on his podcast too. So he doesn't just answer questions that people have asked of him for that episode. He'll also read out maybe some competing opinions based on something that he'd shared in the previous episode. So he's linking it all together in this one amazing experience. And there's one extra thing that you can do here. When you've gone above and beyond to help someone in your community, and let's face it, like another example I had, it was the world's #1 sleep doctor came on my podcast. I've never had so many questions be sent to me. So when someone has a serious question, maybe it's causing health problems or something else, and you can get that answered for free by a top specialist and send the episode to that person, they're going to be so happy. The amount of emails that I got back from this episode, people were thrilled. That's an opportunity for you to turn around. If you have something that you really need help with, or that you want them to help you with, that is the time to be able to say, you know what, thanks so much for the positive feedback on the episode. So happy the sleep doctor was able to answer your question. If you want to help get the podcast in front of more people, we'd really appreciate if you could give the show a 5-star rating. Here is the link to be able to do that. That is something that you can do to create more visibility for your podcast. And another really good way to do that in terms of packaging that all together, hopefully you've got a very clear idea on your audience and who you serve. What are the most urgent problems that they have? And create enticing podcast episodes that encourage a whole bunch of questions for that. An example would be if you're a financial advisor, you could say, I'm creating an episode on the 10 steps to achieve financial freedom, or I'm going to answer questions on the best things that you can invest in right now. What questions do you have on investing? Bang, 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 bang. You're going to get all of these different questions that people can submit. You use your expertise to answer those questions honestly on the show. Email them all when the episode is out. Give them an opportunity to help you, because if you don't think they want to help you, that's a limiting belief that you want to be able to overcome. And that's a way that they get more help. You've made your audience part of the conversation. You're able to get a boost in ratings or whatever call to action that you want to put on. And you've given everyone an amazing experience. That is the mistake for today and how to take care of it. Rons and Mick, any thoughts on that or comments?
No, I think it was really cool that it landed up becoming like that. The good sounding podcast of one of the elements of the three of the elements that I covered earlier. The first element was engage. How do you engage? And you just covered like the really important mistake that we make is not engaging with our audience because we don't know how to. Like as business owners or as presenters that learn to become, or business owners that learn to present rather, right? We are trained in a certain environment, and that environment is where you're standing up on a stage and you're sort of delivering this information to someone. But in this kind of context of creating a show, we don't know how to do that yet. We're learning. We're still learning. I'm still learning, like 9 years in, because it's not part of my training. I was not, I'm not off the way. Like James keeps saying that he's got like the degrees in English because he feels really strongly about it because of all the training he's gone through. I feel like I'm not trained, and I'm like, oh, that's interesting. Something happens and I'm like, oh shit, that's interesting. Learn, like write it down, make an Evernote folder, learn, create a framework so that it doesn't happen again. And that's the way like I'm kind of building it up. So I think engagement is key. So if you're watching this on any of the platforms, and you found value, like sharing this would be extremely helpful for us because we want more people to be part of the show. This is our 4th episode, and we're not recording 52 weeks a year, right? So we were very specific as to how we wanted to create the show. Is like we wanted to like make sure that we were not recording every week, but we wanted to make sure that it was regular. So we're doing this every Wednesday and Friday if you are in Australia in the future. But same if you're in the US and the past. Pun intended. It is Tuesday and Thursdays at 4:30 p.m. Pacific time that we're running this. So we're doing we're recording probably 30 weeks of the year. We're doing this show. And we're doing twice a week. So we kind of put limitations so that we didn't burn ourselves out, and we wanted to create content, but we also wanted to create a space where we allowed people in. I'm keen to hear what Mick thinks of this whole scenario, because I don't know anyone else that has invested so much money in tech gear than Mick, maybe.
Speaking of that, I was just making notes on my remarkable too, like crazy as James was outlining that mistake, and I've got some bloody awesome ideas already to improve the podcast. So thank you very much for that, James. The engagement mistake, I just want to put my hand up to say that I've made it, and just being part of today's conversation has been really, really valuable for me. I've learnt so much. I've reinforced the ideas that I need to be more engaging and making sure that I'm staying at the front edge of what the current problems are. So what we're talking about really does make sense. We've now, similar to this, we live stream the podcast and then the replay gets put up also, and having people being able to make comments as you're going through the live stream, asking questions as you're going through the live broadcast has really made a big difference. And if I could just encourage anybody who's starting this and doing this to just keep doing it on a regular basis, so it becomes habitual, like at a certain day, certain time. Regularity, consistency is really important. And when we first started doing it, we might have had one person, two people, or no people listening to the live, but lots of people would be downloading the replay and so forth. But the live now is starting to gain traction because of that consistency, and we just kept doing it same time, same day, and recognizing the people that are watching live, saying g'day to them, asking them to make a comment, asking them to create a question. So it's really relevant to the people listening, has made a big difference. So again, can I just thank you guys for giving me the opportunity to jump on here today, because it's kind of been like a 2-to-1 coaching session for me, which has been really cool.
We love you, Mick. We love having you involved. And something you said there that really resonated with me. Tomorrow I'm interviewing one of the top drummers in the history of the world, a guy called Kenny Aronoff, and he had mentioned a quote in his book. He said, "You never make it, you're always trying to make it." And I love that attitude. You know, we're all learning, we're all growing, we all got to put in that effort and that commitment to that learning now. So big moment of gratitude for you, Mick. You're helping a lot of people out there and doing some amazing things in the world. So we know your time is super valuable. So thank you very much for being here. If you've just joined us here on episode 4 of Podcasting for Business, we do this twice a week. We've got a bunch of amazing things coming up for you. If you want a recap of what we covered earlier, if you've just tuned in, I believe that was a different stream because we had some technical issues that will be alleviated by next time. We went through the 3 elements of a good sounding podcast. Then we went through Mick's amazing story and shared some of the things that really helped move the needle, not only in his business, but the things he's implementing for his current clients. And then we also went through the mistake for today was forgetting to include and engage your audience in your podcast content. So we gave you some good tactical ways to be able to do that. Gentlemen, an absolute pleasure to see you. And Podcasting for Business, episode 5. We'll be back next week. So we'll see you then.
See you, team. Thanks, Mick, James. Good to see everyone.